So why am I doing this? I'm starting this podcast because we all have a story and finances play a part in our struggles and successes. If we can learn from the many mistakes many others have made, we can make sure that more of us are successful. Like the quote says, to increase the chances of success, we must increase our failure rate. To be honest, I failed a ton. I will bring people from all walks of life, but mostly service members. If you have a story you would like to share, do not hesitate to reach out. From the go, like and subscribe to this podcast so many others can benefit. All right, here for the next episode of the Financial Enabler Podcast. I have Nick Syer, a financial educator, financial mentor, and former Marine Raider, and a good friend of mine. I wanted to remind you all that the reason we're bringing people here into our podcast is because we can learn from our struggles and successes. Eventually, we'll start bringing in people from various walks of life, but we can all learn from them. And Nick has a great story, so we want to share this with you. And let's get to this episode. All right, Nick, how you doing, man?
Good, man. How you been?
Dude, really good. I had just finished an exercise and after the baton. So, when I thought I was going to start recovering, it keeps getting delayed. And as you can imagine, the HRV says that it's really bad. So I need to go sleep. So here I am. I'll deal with it tonight.
Yeah. I'm already, I don't know how much caffeine I've had today, but it's a good day.
Probably a lot. That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So as we spoke before, and we want to share your story. What can you tell us about you? What's your story like? Where does it start?
So I'm from upstate New York originally, Rochester. So really cold, not far from Canada. Been really cold, and I moved to a small town outside of Kansas City when I was about 13. I went to high school there, played some sports. And then when I was sometime during my senior year in high school, I enlisted into the Marine Corps, into the MEPS program, and took that summer to kind of just be a kid, had fun, blew off some steam, went to boot camp in August of 2008 in San Diego. And then, let's see. I spent my first few years in the Marine Corps as a radio operator.
Nice.
And back up a little bit, I joined the military knowing nothing about the military. I had maybe two family members in the Army, both of which I didn't really have a relationship with, right, or, talk to, or have anybody to say, hey, do this or look out for this. And went in thinking especially in the Marine Corps, everybody's got the same job or something. So had the radio operator job, went to Okinawa, Japan for my first duty station. I didn't enjoy it because I was 19 years old and I didn't understand the opportunity that was to be living in another country. So now, had I been there, when I was older, I would have enjoyed it.
Right.
I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. I was attached to a different unit. And that's when I found out about MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command. Had the only thing I knew about special forces or special operations was Green Berets and Delta Force for movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So
you didn't know the SEALs? You didn't read any books?
Oh yeah, everybody knows what the SEALs did. I mean, that's a different story. So I went to selection for MARSOC in 2011 and went to ITC, which is the pipeline course, 9-month course, in 2012. And then from 2012 to 2019, I was at 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, did a few deployments there. And then for about 2.5 years, I was an instructor at our direct action section, and doing anything from urban warfare, urban combat, marksmanship, close quarter battle, breaching, and then eventually transitioned to the chief instructor for our advanced course. Probably one of my most enjoyable time periods as an instructor, because it was a lot of just giving back and then seeing instantaneous results from people that benefited them and their teams and anyone else they were going to encounter. And then things were kind of pulled out from under me pretty quickly, but also drawn out. I was later medically retired, right at about 14 years and a month. And that was.
Are you able to share? Can you share what happened? Are you okay with that?
Yeah. So basically, I had too many blows to the head, whether it was blunt force trauma or overpressure, blast overpressure, which you're very familiar with. And it was really, I had a handful of events that were, you can link it back to like, oh yeah, I got hit in the face with a boat engine and it knocked me out. So obviously that caused, a concussion. It was a traumatic brain injury. But I was young and I felt like I recovered, but it was just that, over time that stuff adds up. And then when I became an instructor and I was constantly around explosives, and just continuous gunfire in small confined spaces, it was that continuous exposure to micro overpressure over years. And then, it compounded and, I had a lot of issues with memory, balance, just, your basic cognitive functions. And then there's a handful of other things, but basically, I went to a TBI center called Intrepid Spirit. It was 5 weeks long.
Nice.
It was really beneficial. I would recommend everybody in special operations doing it. Even if you feel fine, there's so many resources within that clinic that I took advantage of that I never even would have thought of. Well, yeah, that over time led to me being basically they told me, said you can try and re-enlist, but with all of these medical issues going on, the chances of your re-enlistment being approved are pretty slim. So we're going to put you on a medical board. And then, I thought it was the right choice at the time, and it ended up being the right choice looking back on it now, but it was a very painful, very long process because mine happened. It started basically right before and then all throughout the height of COVID.
Right. And so tell me, because I know you're a Kansas City fan, right? How's that? Is that so? And you play football. Did you think that some of your TBI in high school led to everything in the military also, having the TBI early?
I mean, it's really hard to say just because when I was a teenager, playing football or wrestling or baseball, you're at least wearing a helmet when you're playing football and all that. But a couple concussions when I was a teenager. But I probably can't say for certain that it didn't contribute to anything, but I don't know exactly to what extent it did contribute. But the majority, I don't know exactly how many concussions, TBIs I had. It's several. But those significant ones, plus the constant bursts of overpressure from explosions and being in confined spaces, just made things way worse.
Yeah, and I also recently did the Intrepid Spirit Center just last year, and one of the things that I tell everybody is that we often wait till too late in the military to do it. Right now, I'm a big advocate of especially for soft operators, for EOD, even old artillery men, not the HIMARS guys, to try to go a year 15. And the reason we talk about this stuff is important because it has a trickle effect, right? Your career got pulled under you. Now you have disability. It affects your income. So there's certain things that plays into all that. Which I want everybody to take note of that because it starts affecting it. So before we keep going with the post-military, is there anything that you remember about your upbringing financially? It's not, the point's not whether you were wealthy or not, but can you remember things that your parents would say, that your friends would say, neighbors, that maybe affected you, how you saw finances later on in life?
The constant thing I heard was, what do you think money grows on trees? That everybody's heard that, but it was I think just growing up, I had my parents, my dad was a delivery truck driver for a while, worked for like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Little Debbie, Sara Lee Bread Company, and then eventually, worked his way up, making good money. My mom has been a hairstylist since before I was born. And the money with that really varies on your location, your clientele. And currently she lives in a small town, so her clientele is not huge. And she works out of her house, and it's
right.
When I was about 15, my parents split. So I was living with my mom, and she was pretty much paying for everything. Did a really good job of shielding me from understanding the true issues financially that her and my dad were going through, especially splitting up, and it wasn't the most pleasant between the two of them. So very much grew up, a paycheck to paycheck family. And then, I had multiple jobs when I was 14, 15 years old, all the way through high school. And it wasn't one specific thing or saying, but it just turned into this, once I get out of the military, if I can make $100,000 a year, I'm set. Yeah. That's all I need. And with, just simple, take a look at inflation. $100,000 isn't $100,000 anymore. And it really doesn't get you much, especially with home interest rates for mortgages rising. And it's just, it's that paycheck mindset and being okay with, well, I'll spend 12 hours a day, 5 or 6 days, or maybe 7 days a week working for someone else to make what essentially becomes the bare minimum.
Right. And it's funny. I'm sure you saw that article that like $100,000 in New York City is like $32,000, and the reality changes that. And it's you keep saying about mindset, right? Did that? Do you feel that the mindset about money is equally important to actually having the money? So do you see it differently now about how your goals with money, have they changed drastically, or you're still just shooting for the $100,000 or let's say $200,000?
Yeah, no, they've changed significantly. So after I got out of the military, actually while I was getting out of the military, I was doing this internship program with a business not far from where I live. Ended up being the general manager there for a while, unpaid, because it was I was still in the military, so legally they couldn't pay me until I went on terminal leave. Then they paid me, and then by that time I was starting to basically take control of my finances and my money. Yeah. And I said to myself, making $85,000 to $100,000 a year salary, I would quickly reach a ceiling. I'd get I'd get bored, I'd get frustrated, and then it's just like, well, what do I do from here? So I left that. I did some contracting at some private training facilities for military and law enforcement. And then, as far as my viewpoint on money, it's changed drastically. I'm not a rich person right now, but I will be. And
oh wow, cool.
There's that mindset, or the saying. I think it was Jesse Itzler who I heard say it was, we're all millionaires, we just haven't been paid yet. Right. And so it's just that mindset of getting there, unless you win the lottery, then you're, you have to put in the work. Cause and then most of the people, honestly, if you come into a large sum of money like that, they blow it all anyway. So the mindset is huge, because even if you have a lot of money, you need to know how to use it, how to invest it, where to put it, how to make it work for you. And that was saying of like, I need my money to make money while I'm sleeping. Yeah.
And for people that don't know Jesse Itzler, he's a huge role model for me as well, because he was a guy that came from nothing, became a billionaire, has sold a company, formerly Marquis Jet, to Warren Buffett, and is also an avid runner, and now he's completed 100-milers. So the reason that I look up to him, I'm sure is very similar, is that he has achieved two things that most people that we know will never strive to, right? And this guy's still humble. He's just another guy in the street, right? And he has that right mindset of, he's made $1 billion. He's going to do it again and again, and again, he's just going to keep climbing. So cool. That's really awesome. That mindset has changed and has served you well. Like you said, you may not be a millionaire, but you're already feeling it. You're already living it. You're just not acting like it and being wasteful. Is that correct?
Yeah. Really it boiled down to, for me, just when I said earlier, taking full control of my money and my investments. I had a financial advisor, really great guy, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, nobody cares about my money more than me. And I was so comfortable for a long time, for a decade, saying, here's my money. I don't know anything about the market, mutual funds, stocks, bonds, portfolios, whatever. Just take my money and make more money for me. I know that you're going to take a little bit off the top, but I get it. You've got a job to do. And now when I, looking back, I tell people, even people, friends or family who've got a financial advisor, whatever it is, stick with them, especially if you like them, but ask them questions, and say, hey, what is this? What is your management fee? What are some hidden fees? What are all these other fees? Ask for a prospectus and say, make me understand this. Explain this to me like I'm one of your kids, not another financial advisor.
Yeah.
So just asking questions, ask why, it's your money. And if they get frustrated about it, then maybe find someone else, because it's not their money.
Yeah, and those fees eat up. I had a financial advisor for 14 years. I'm still in the process of leaving him due to some loans that I had with him, and it's just, they take so much. It's great. They made 14, but they took that 1.5 or 1, and it's a lot, right? Especially if you're not getting education out of it. So, well, with that, do you know your financial independence number? I know that you've mentioned that, and can you explain what a financial independence number is?
Yeah, so I do. So mine is roughly $1.4 million. Basically, that is the way I look at it is a conservative side financial independence number, and then a bit of an aggressive side. So taking, accumulating all of my expenses, my current monthly expenses, and then multiplying that by 10. So that'd be the conservative side. The aggressive side would be taking in my income, multiplying that by 10. So basically, the standard of, if I were to pass away, then my, whoever my beneficiaries were would essentially have my income for 10 years. So that, understanding your financial independence number is crucial. Not only for just retiring, whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, want to retire at 60, 65, whatever, but for those people that want to start a business, a nonprofit, whatever it is, if you, the thing I like to give, and everybody in the military will understand this, is like not knowing your financial independence number for retiring or starting a business or doing something long-term is like, if I were to go on a mission and I was going to use a helicopter to get there, but neither me nor the helicopter pilot knew where the target was. So we're just flying around, just seeing what works, and then eventually maybe getting to where we need to be, but probably not.
So you're saying like you need to have an end point instead of sightseeing your way through your financial existence, right? Yeah. Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah. Cool. That's really important. We talk a lot about that and finding that number. And like, I like what you said. It's not about retiring. It's about all my expenses are paid. You can choose to continue to work if you want, but at least they're paid, which is great. Mm-hmm. So going back to the military, do you think that you maximized, did you got the most out of your reenlistments, your per diem, your hazard of duty pays, or is it all gone? Which,
yeah.
Okay.
No, not at all. I didn't, again, this was when I was very financially illiterate. And I've never, I learned as I went, as you're, growing up in the military and then, getting into special operations, you get a little bit more incentive pays, and, as I got promoted, making more money, and then re-enlisting, getting re-enlistment bonuses, or being, getting tax-free money, especially if I'm somewhere I'm getting a lot of per diem. There was a portion where I was making $9,000 or $10,000 a month, all tax free, and it was awesome. And then I made a couple purchases, and before I knew it, that money was not gone, but not spent properly. And had I known what I know now in my early 20s, I probably, again, this is hindsight and all that, but
right.
I mean, 90% of that I didn't need to spend. I could have saved, and that money could be growing. Could have been growing for the last 14, 15 years.
Right
now, I still wouldn't even touch it. But yeah, a lot of that money was just, I look, even simple things of, I bought this vehicle. Well, I should just pay it off right now, or, and not ever understanding the difference between appreciating and depreciating assets. All right. And, so dropping lump sums of money into things. And then, buying my first house, I didn't know anything about, like PMI insurance for like that 20% threshold. Just little things like that. But no, to answer your question, I did not use my additional bonus money and deployment money properly.
So if you were to go back to young Nick Syer and he was about to go buy something that he really wanted, what is a number that you could tell him, hey bro, save this percentage and still go have fun with all this, that you think you could convince that Nick Syer to actually save?
My goal is, as far as spending, if I'm going to buy something outright, or even if I'm going to lease or rent something, knowing that I'm going to pay it off, then initially that purchase, if possible, is 10 or 15% of the current liquid money that I have, or assets that I could liquidize, and then saving anywhere from 20 to 40%. Minimum 20. If I can save 20% of my annual income, then I'm doing leaps and bounds better than the average American, which it's in the single digit percentages of what they're saving.
Right. And so for everybody, kind of what it distilled is, right? If he was saving 20% of his income, but he could save 40% of his hazardous duty pay, and I'll use dive pay, right? Dive pay is $215. If he saved 40%, that would be about $85 a month, right? So he can save quite a bit of money while still having enough to have fun, right? So that's a balancing act of like, all right, you want to go party, you want to go buy things, go ahead, but put the small chunk, right? And cool. I wanted to understand that because I go back to my time in MARSOC, right? And I saved the money on my deployments, but then when I went to PACOM, my Maldives and Malaysia deployment, I came back with like $0. It's all gone, right? I had a lot of fun, but I wish I could convince myself to stash a little bit.
If I could add one thing to that, specifically for people in the military who are either going to deploy soon, have deployed, will deploy, eventually, or have any type of additional hazard duty pay, special duty assignment pay, jump dive, whatever it is, then try to focus on your base pay and say, okay, this is my living expense, right? And then all those additional pays, I didn't have them before. I've got to do things throughout the year to make sure that I don't lose that pay. So I need to look at that pay as not guaranteed. So for me, when I was in the military, it was jump dive, special duty assignment pay. Those three things I started to, but I wish I would have years ago looked at them as, okay, these pays aren't guaranteed. I'm going to take this and save 100% of those because I only need my base pay. And then when I go on deployment, the tax-free portion, or if I'm making per diem, well, I didn't need it then. I don't need it now. So take that, also save it. Yeah. So it's just the mindset of not living past your means, because a lot of people nowadays, they make more money, they spend more money. They keep making more money. Oh, now I can buy that really expensive house where I'm living outside my means and I don't need to. And then when crisis happens, you're kind of screwed.
Right. And I always talk about per diem as my favorite variable income, right? Like, got it. While you're traveling, you have to eat out. But in reality, even if you saved, let's say at the end of the trip, all costs accounted for, the food that you ate, and assuming that you didn't party too much, if you had $100 left over if those $100 you grab it and throw it into your mortgage for that month, or you put into an investment vehicle, it's just going to sit there and compound, right? Because it's variable income. You might as well use it. Like you say, you didn't have it before, so why account for it? So with that, what would you say is the best and worst financial advice you ever got?
Oh, man. Best financial advice was probably, and I can't remember exactly when this was told to me, but that taking control of your money, understanding how money works. If you don't understand how money works, then it's a very slim chance that you're going to essentially attain all the goals and dreams that you have.
Yeah.
Worst financial advice, man, I don't know. Have a money manager.
Have a money manager.
I mean, have somebody manage my money and take, a portion off the top that just keeps adding and adding and adding. I mean, I don't know. There's a handful of things. I've had some friends hit me up about some investment opportunities that didn't pan out. Those would also classify as bad financial advice. But doing the research and understanding, like you said, compound interest and being able to get a type of return that is going to actually benefit you down the road.
Yeah. Those are good. I agree with the money manager. So next thing is, do you feel that anything that you learned from the military, from being an operator, for being even a radio operator, or anything from the military or the Marine Corps, that actually has benefited you in your new career and your new path?
Yeah, so I'd say one of the biggest things is kind of a selfless mentality, team before myself, whatever that might be, whether it's your family, your close friends, your clients, whoever it is, because at the end of the day, if I'm putting other people before myself and not just thinking about like a dollar amount of what I want or, where I want to be in 10, 15, 20 years, but be in the present of I'm with this individual, they have these concerns, these questions. Let me give all my focus and attention to that and help them. And then that is going to, positive karma is going to come back and everything follows with that. Right. So if I'm helping somebody, the things that I want long-term, they're going to follow. It might not be immediate, but it will happen. And then I'd say a little bit of the efficiency side of the military, especially going into the private civilian sector. A lot of really great personalities and really smart people. I learned a lot of new things over, various other jobs outside the military. But the biggest thing I saw that was lacking was efficiency. That whole, having a meeting just to have another meeting, and not really driving home, productivity. And then I'd say the last thing is micromanagement. That's huge in some of the other jobs I've had outside the military. Whereas when I was on a team, or especially on a team and in being an instructor, it's, I have my job. The guys that are working with me or for me have their jobs. If I don't trust them to do it, then what am I doing here as their leader, right? So I'm just saying, here's what we need to get done. You don't have to ask me for approval on certain things. Just get the end result. It doesn't always matter how you get there, and then if you have questions, ask along the way.
Yeah, that's a very good. I've seen a lot of the inefficiencies, and they drive me nuts. You said something about giving people value. Have you ever read The Go-Giver?
I have not.
Yeah, it's basically that, but it talks about 5 laws of stratospheric success, with law number 1 being give value. And I totally believe in that. We look at the things in our lives. Here I am. I'm using an Apple computer, using Bose headphones. We have iPhones, and And regardless, these people are going to get wealthy because they've given us products that's given us value, right? We cannot take that away, right? Jeff Bezos, he's made our life easier. Right now, both you and I, there's a high chance we'll get off this call. We're like, oh, I need something. On Amazon, it's like, cool, I'll be here tomorrow. Sick.
Yeah.
Right? But it's changed the world for us. Next thing, give me your thoughts on the military pay system. And I'm curious because I think it's generally really good, especially when we account for BAH being non-taxable. But what are your thoughts?
I think it's good, but I wouldn't agree with myself if I said, starting out, especially as an enlisted individual.
Yeah.
If you're single, then it can be a struggle. For me, when I joined being 18 years old, I had no debt, I had no expenses. The money I was making was whatever. I was living paycheck to paycheck, but I didn't own a house, I didn't own a car. I was living in another country, just kind of blowing my money and doing whatever. But I knew guys I went to boot camp with a few guys who were married or maybe not married, but had debt, had kids. Left boot camp as a private first class, making, was at $500 or $600 a paycheck. Not getting housing allowance, having to live in the barracks, having to eat at the chow hall. So you're not getting that additional money for groceries. So it can be a struggle depending on, the age that you are at the rank that you are. But the security is hard to beat, right? So for 14 years and a month, I had a guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks, no questions asked. I knew that I could Google the military pay chart and say, okay, well, in a couple of years, I'll hit this rank, I'll make this much money. I can budget for that now. Or I can expect, if I made a purchase and I had a promotion coming up, and say, okay, I can afford this. So it's, as far as the security standpoint, it is nice because, for the majority of Americans, like 99%, it's, just about anybody can lose their job for anything at any moment.
And I never accounted for that the cost of it if you have debt, which again, a lot of it comes to management, but it's difficult when you try to add up all the benefits that we get. You're in another country, low expenses, and it's one thing that I think we're both agreeing is that it could be better. But I think that too many people are stuck in the purely negative that like this isn't a lot without accounting for. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
And so now that I know that you're in the finance space and you're a mentor, you're a guide, and you're doing great things for people, how do you invest your money, and how are you preparing for maybe just 10 years from now and retirement?
So there's obviously dozens of different ways to invest your money. As far as, the biggest thing I look at is how am I being taxed?
Right.
So, I have a savings account for an emergency fund. That's in a high interest savings account. So, it's at least I'm getting, 3 or 4% return on that instead of just your standard bank account. I think my previous bank savings account was 0.01%. So that's never going to make me any type of interest, right? And then there's the tax deferred, which I had. I'm not paying taxes now, but I will at a later date. And the big thing being tax exempt. So that's like Roth IRAs, permanent life insurance. You can use those tools as vehicles to get to that financial independence number or reach those goals financially that you want for you or your family, and then not have that burden or worry of, okay, 20 or 30 years from now, what are taxes going to be like? And all I see now is in the next 8 to 10 years, if we even want to maintain spending the way that the country is spending, the taxes would need to double, a while back, just to pay off, keep even essentially on the interest for the debt.
Yeah. And let me ask you, since you mentioned permanent life insurance, because I know that a lot of people don't like it, and it comes down to cost for most people. Do you think the cost of permanent life insurance is worth it, especially when you account for the expense ratios or any costs associated with even a Roth, or the fact that you cannot contribute as much to a Roth? Is that worth your time? Do you think it pays off in the long run?
It can if it's structured properly, right? So if I'm using a Roth IRA, just because there's a different vehicle for me to use, like life insurance, doesn't mean I need to get rid of my Roth IRA. It's still a tax exempt account. Maybe I want those big fluctuations in the market. I want a 20%, 25% increase, and I'm accepting the risk of having a negative year or 2 negative years. So then I look at the insurance side is my bonds portion of my entire portfolio, right? Because the principal's protected. So they, think about your investment wrapped insurance. It's guaranteed that what you put in, it will not go below that, right? It won't drop like the market drops. Right. But that being said, generally speaking, life insurance as a retirement vehicle isn't always the best thing for everyone, right? You still have to qualify for it, so you have to be relatively healthy. It goes through an underwriting process, but if structured properly, I think that's the key word there. If it's structured properly, and it's not just your term, like a lot of people say, okay, well, I'll just buy a term policy because it's $50, I get 30 years of coverage, and I think it's something like only 2% of term policies are paid out. So if I had a term policy for 30 years and I'm going to outlive it, guaranteed, then by the time my term policy expires, I'll be in my early 60s, and then I'm going to be close to being uninsurable, basically, from the cost of insurance, applying for insurance, at 63, 64 years old. So
and it gets even worse when you account for the Ramsey method term and put in a brokerage account, hopefully in his brokerage account, so he gets 1%. Awesome. And then pay taxes. And again, I think that term has a place in a financial strategy, especially with living benefits. But
absolutely.
It's not, I wouldn't do the Ramsey method for that, even though I'll give kudos to Ramsey. He has good tips, especially on debt management. Cool. So that's how you're prepping for retirement. Do you also do real estate?
Not yet, but I want to. That's one of my long-term goals. I have a neighbor of mine who is heavily invested into Airbnb properties, and he a few years back, and he's a good friend of mine. I pick his brain every now and then. He quit his job. He had a great job. Quit his job and went full on with setting up Airbnbs with real estate properties, and it was slow at first, but like anything else, you stick with it and it's starting to explode for him, and it's great. And I look at it as it's not always a depreciating asset, especially right now. And then it's that, I'm as far as real estate, I would probably start dipping my toe into it as far as maybe a long-term rental, or turning, using something as an Airbnb, but then looking at things that are, considered like recession proof, like a quadplex, duplex type thing. And utilizing that down the road as a vehicle as far as passive income for me and my family.
Cool. So last big question, and then I'm going to go into a question that I want to ask everybody. So what are your top 5 dreams and why?
I actually wrote some of these down. So kind of in no particular order, establishing a passive income stream for myself, right? So, having my investments making anywhere from 8 to 10% annually, so that the money I'm putting away is building for me long term. But if I want to, I can also use that for big purchases in the future. Down payment on a house, buy a car. If I have kids, funding their college education. But mainly, setting up passive income so that if something were to happen, or if I couldn't work, if my what I left the military for got so bad to the point where I had to really limit what I was doing, having something established now for the future that's going to constantly pay me, We use that term system-driven income. And then another one, I've always I want to give back to my mom because she took care of me and barely made by on her own. And then I know for a fact there were days where, she'd maybe skip a meal that she'd had to buy at work or something so that she could, get, me dinner or something.
Yeah. Got to look out for super moms, man. They're just incredible.
So paying off her debt, essentially retiring her, owning real estate, creating generational wealth is huge for me. I don't have any kids yet, but eventually one day. And basically setting them up to where they won't have to deal with that paycheck to paycheck, or if anything happens that, they're not having to worry about, well, am I going to be able to afford cleats for football practice, or am I just going to run around in Chuck Taylors and slide all over the grass? So when I leave, they have a nest egg already established, and then they can build upon that, and then also educating them along the way. And then I don't have a specific idea yet, but eventually starting some type of nonprofit, geared towards veterans. And then I don't know yet. I'm looking into the inner workings of this. Either it's whether I, invest a lot of money from that passive income stream in my investments, or start some type of nonprofit as far as to combat human trafficking. That's kind of a huge goal of mine. So, big aspirations, but if I set some easy goals, then, I'm not really going to get very far. Whereas if I have something that maybe seems unattainable now, along the way, I'm going to hit goals that I didn't really think were possible. But then looking back, I'm like, oh, that was easy because I'm still shooting for this big thing at the end. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's like going to the gym. You don't go to the gym to say, I can't wait to bench 95 pounds, right? Well, for guys like us, right? Like, I know that's a worthy goal for many people, but not for guys like us. I'll share one of my goals that I didn't know your story about TBI, and maybe we'll talk about it some more. One of my goals is I would like to fund brain MRIs for every EOD tech when they graduate EOD school. So you graduate, and I pay for a brain MRI just to, here's your baseline, right? And I'm sure that has the same worthy cause in the soft community, just to create a baseline, right? Because after that, every single year is going to get worse, right? And hopefully we capture that so that we have a clearer picture of knowing what damage was done in the service, which it happens, right? We are the ones choosing to be breachers and to get into shoot houses, right? Nobody's making us do that, right? And for crying out loud, it's incredibly fun. So we're like, I can't wait to go do it, right? So we're like, I can't wait to get banged in the head. It's going to happen. So that's one of mine. So maybe I'll drag you into that idea. Maybe we'll fund all our more.
I think that's a great idea. And I mean, what I would love to see is that turn into a standard practice when joining, EOD or SOCOM, anything that you're going to be around overpressure in general. It doesn't just have to be an explosive. You mentioned artillery. Because that was a thing. I think I've had like 9 or 10 brain scans with and without contrast, MRIs, CTs, whatever. And a lot of them, they come back, oh, hey, it looks great. Your white matter, this and that looks fine, but there is no baseline for me. Right? Yeah. So the earliest I had a brain scan was when I went to the TBI clinic.
Same.
So that was 2019 after being exposed to, I don't know how much overpressure, large PSI values. And all I'm thinking is, okay, well, did it knock me out, or was it so bad that it made me throw up immediately? If not, okay, it probably wasn't that bad, where, it is bad. So, but having a baseline, I think that's a huge goal. And definitely something that I would be, I'd enjoy being a part of.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we make our millions. It's happening. So last question. What is something, regardless of cost, that you're never gonna, that you'll always pay for it, right? That you'll never compromise. It's like, I will always buy this, right? Is there something that is that important to you?
As far as now, like like a hobby or something specifically towards like retirement?
Anything like, for example, for me, a big one is that I'm never going to compromise on my fishing trips, right? I'm never going to compromise on going out. When I go out to eat, I don't want to look at the price of the food, right? Because I'm compromising in other places, but is there something you'll never compromise on?
I think for me personally, the big thing would be doing, whether it's small or big trips with my girlfriend Natalie and taking our dogs out. Unfortunately, after I left the military and with just a lot of ups and downs, that kind of has taken a back seat to things. And I hate it. So that's, that's something that's going to pick back up again. And, it's, for me, it's I got to get out and do something. And then it's those trips where, we talk about all the time. We've got some planned coming up, but doing trips where it's just her and I, the dogs, just the family, shutting off the phones, if we're going out to dinner or whatever, leave the phones in the car, just kind of taking some time every now and then to just detach yourself from everything else and give yourself a little reset. So that's something that I have been compromising slightly, but that's it's not going to happen moving forward. So well, this is an open invite for you to come to New Mexico so we can go fly fishing. I don't know if you like fly fishing or if you've done it, but it's great out here. I've never been to New Mexico and I've never been fly fishing, so
let's
why
go.
not do both?
It's great. Why not?
Yeah.
Any closing comments that you want to leave to the audience or for your audience as you grow your own platforms?
I'd say just, the biggest thing I keep thinking of is just take ownership and control of the things in your life, mainly, especially we're talking about finance. So, your investments and your money. Even if you're going to have somebody else manage your money for you, completely understand what they're doing and how they're doing it and where. And then, just being educated on what's out there. It really pains me whenever I talk to someone and I educate them on, I try to show them everything that's out there. And I get this, aha moment of, well, I didn't know that existed. Is this real? It seems kind of like too good to be true type thing. And then I get really amped up because it's like, it is really great. And it is really good, but it is true and you can use it and anybody can use it. This is, it's not just for the wealthy. It's, there's so many things out there that whether it's making money for retirement or just protecting what you have, being able to, not a lot of people understand that you can just, if you have a lot of money in an IRA, 401k or something, there are ways to transfer that money elsewhere where, if we have a huge negative year like we did last year, or if we have in the early 2000s where we have 3 consecutive negative years, maybe you don't make money, but you're not losing all that money that you saved over the years and years and years and not having to put yourself, add 10 years to your work life and actually retire when you want to.
Yeah, that's great tips, and I'm great way to close it. But yeah, man, thank you very much for your time. This was awesome. Way more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. Way easy, and we always enjoy talking to each other. But dude, this was great, man. This is the end of the episode, so see you guys later.